Hi, this is Evangelina. Today, I am going to teach you how to use SPSS. SPSS stands for Statistical Package for the Social Science. This training is to help you become familiar with SPSS, and I hope that this introduction will lead you to see what a powerful tool SPSS is. The items that I will be reviewing today are opening SPSS, the data editor, the syntax editor, the output viewer window, how to run frequency procedures in the data editor, how to interpret the frequency procedures that the output viewer produces, and finally, the SPSS startup tutorial. Let's get started. Opening SPSS. There are two ways of accessing SPSS. It all depends on whether you have the program installed on your hard drive or you need to access it from a network. I'm going to be accessing SPSS from a network, but then once I'm in, I will show you how you can access SPSS on your PC. If you're logging into a network, you should already have a username and password. If you don't know your username or password, I recommend that you first learn how to do this before you proceed. Unless you have SPSS on your hard drive, which I will be showing you once I log in. You want to click OK. Now that you have your desktop connection, I will show you how to open SPSS if it is installed on your hard drive. What you would do is you would go down to your startup menu. You want to click All Programs. Then you want to click on IBM SPSS Statistics. And then you want to double click on IBM SPSS Statistics 20. This will bring SPSS up. A startup screen will appear asking you what would you like to do. This window allows the user to choose from a number of quick start options, such as loading an existing data file or opening a recently used file. Since I don't have an existing file yet, I will click Cancel. This will take me to an untitled SPSS data editor. Data editor. The data editor is very similar to a spreadsheet application like Microsoft Excel. We need a data set to analyze. SPSS recognizes and is able to import files created in other applications like Excel, Word, and Notepad. I will not be instructing you on how to import files from other applications. What I will be doing is creating a data file from scratch. Doing this will make you more familiar with the main components of SPSS on creating data files, analyzing the data, and viewing the results. This will also help you on understanding how the data is organized into a file. We will be using a data set. Let's assume that a business professor is interested in the number of psychology courses that students have taken prior to enrolling in his course. He is also interested in comparing the number of previous psychology courses taken by males and female students. The following table consists of data or scores for the number of psychology courses taken by 10 students, 5 males and 5 females. Note that we have 3 different variables. The first one is the student ID, numbered from 0 to 10, which is the 10 participants. The second is the student's gender, in which 1 equals male and 2 equals female. And the third one is the number of courses, ranging from 1 to 4. The data set that we just saw is what we're going to be using to input the data into the data editor. I have saved that onto a notepad and will be opening that so that I have that available while I'm typing the information in. Just like on Excel, the data editor window is created by entering data into the cells and creating a table. At the bottom, there are 2 tabs. There's a data view and there's a variable view. The variable view is where you are actually going to label or input the variables that you have. In this case, we have 3 variables which we're going to be entering. So we're going to go into the variable view, click on it, and as you can see, now you come to a different screen where you actually have headings. Our main interest today on these headers are name, and we're going to be using value, but just for one of our variables. There are rules in naming our variables, and these rules are that the variable must begin with a letter, and the maximum length is 8 characters. Upper or lower cases may be used. It doesn't matter which ones you decide to use. Just remember what you have called each variable and what each variable means. Let's get started entering our variables. For the first one, student ID, I will call it student ID. When I hit enter, all the other headers are filled in. We're not going to worry about those for now. We're only going to worry about entering our variables at the moment. The second variable is the student gender. I'm just going to call that one gender. Hit enter. And then the third one is the number of courses the students took. I'm going to call these psych courses. As you noticed, I wanted to call this psych courses, but it didn't allow me to put psych courses because I was going to be over my character limit, which is 8. So it only gave me psych course. You can try to be creative in creating these variable names. The only thing is you always want to remember what you have called them. Remember that I told you we were going to change the value on gender? So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to click on value and it brings up a new panel. This panel says, what is your value? For the student gender, 1 was male. So we're going to put in value, we're going to put 1 and then we're going to call it male. We're going to click add. Then the number 2, the value of number 2 represents the females. So we're going to call that female and we're going to add. Then we click OK. This now changes and gives us a value. Now we're going to go back to the data view screen. On the screen, you notice that there's a difference. Now we have headers, the student ID, the gender, and the psych course. I'm going to go ahead and change the name for psych course just because the actual data is the number of psychology courses taken. So this might be confusing to me. So I'm going to go ahead and change it. So what I'm going to change this to is I'm going to change this to number of courses. It's that simple. If you make a mistake or if you need to change a header, a variable name, you can go ahead and do so. I'm going back to the data view and as you can see my header has changed. So now what I'm going to do is input the data that I have. Like I said earlier, I actually typed in my data into the notepad so that I can make it available to you and for this training. So here is the data. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to enter the student ID 1. This student's gender is 1 and the number of courses the student has taken is 2. I'm going to go down the list and enter the data just the way that it's on the notepad. Now go ahead and enter all the data just as I started doing it. Here is all my data entered. Always double check or make sure that when you're entering the data that the data is correct. Accuracy of the data entry is very important. If your data is inaccurate, you will have wrong results. So you want to make sure that you take your time when you're inputting the data. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to save our data. We're going to save this. So we're going to go to File and we're going to click on File. We're going to click on Save. I'm going to be saving this file on a flash drive. But the one thing that I want you to notice is that from the data editor window, your save as type is .sav. Just as Microsoft Excel adds the file extension, so does SPSS. And when you save something on the data editor window, SPSS automatically saves it under .sav. I'm going to call this example 1. I'm going to click on Save, and my data is now saved. Or the next screen we're going to be looking at is the syntax editor. I have went ahead and closed the previous file that I had, and I opened a new SPSS. As you can see, it brings me back to my startup menu. I'm going to click on Cancel, but as you can see, there is a file there now, which is the file that we just saved. To access the syntax editor window, you want to click on File, then you want to go down to New, and then you're going to go down to Syntax. A new window will pop up. This window is the syntax editor window. All that the syntax editor is an alternative way to create data files. The syntax editor works like a word processor. We're going to use the same data set that we used on our previous example. The syntax editor requires additional skills. I am not going to go over the additional skills required or the way that you need to actually enter the data into the syntax editor. For the purpose of this training, please follow along. I'm going to enter the data how it needs to be entered, and I will give you a brief explanation of what I'm doing. The first line of the file consists of a syntax code. The code is data list record equals 1-1 ID 1/2 gender three courses 4 period. This is a command. Just like in computer programming, you actually have to give the computer a command. The syntax editor is actually the raw version of the data editor. Most of the times, the data editor is the only one that you're going to use. but the syntax editor is also available, and I wanted you to see that you can also input data and also run it from here. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to enter begin data. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to enter all the data just as it appears here. 0, 0, 1, 2. The second one is 0, 2, 1, 1. 0, 3, 1, 1. I've gone ahead and entered all my data into the syntax editor. Now I need to end data. As you can see, my data is sandwiched in between the begin data and the end data. Now I need to give another command, and this is going to be frequencies variables equal all. If something goes wrong, notice that these change color when I type them in. These are commands. This is another command and it's not highlighting itself or it's not changing color. I misspelled the word frequencies. So once I spell it correctly, as you can see, it changes. It's letting me know that that's a command. And then execute. Notice that the commands have a period. Make sure you put that period in. The data does not have a period. You can expand this. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to save this data set. So I'm going to go to File and I'm going to go to Save. Once again, I am choosing to save onto a memory stick. What I want you to notice again is the save as type. It's no longer .sav. Now it's .sps. SPSS automatically inserts the type for you. Anything that you've saved in the syntax editor is going to be saved with .sps. I'm going to save this file as example1 just so that you can see the difference. The next thing that we're going to look at is the output viewer window. We are going to be using and running from the syntax editor to get to the output viewer window. What we do from here, once we have our data inputted, we click on Run and we click on All. A new window appears, and this is the output viewer window. What we see here is all our data list, and then we see a frequency statistics table, a frequency table with ID, one with gender, and one with courses. Executed. I am not going to interpret this data because I'm going to be giving you a little brief interpretation when we go over the frequency procedure output interpretation. The next thing I want to do from the output viewer window is I want to save this data. So I'm going to click on File, I'm going to click on Save. Again, I have chosen to save this onto a memory stick, but the important thing that I want you to look at again is the save as type. As you can see, SPSS has changed it for you because now it's from its output viewer window. And if you haven't noticed, but this is example1.sav, which is from our data editor window. This is example1.sps from our syntax editor window. And then this is going to be our third example1, but now it's going to be example1.spb, which is from our output window. So let's click on Save. Now we're going to look at the data editor again. We're going to run the frequency procedure. We have pulled up again SPSS, and now we're back at the startup window. We want to open the data that we saved previously. I'm going to click on Open an existing data source. Example1.sav is right there, and I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to highlight it, and then I'm going to click OK. Now I have the data set that I entered previously at the beginning of this training. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and run this data. To run our data from here is a little bit different than from the syntax editor. So what we're going to go to is we're going to go up to the menu bar. We're going to click on Analyze. We're then going to click on Descriptive Statistics. Then we're going to click on Frequency. As you can see, a new window comes up. Usually the first variable is highlighted. We don't really want to know anything in regards to the ID number. So we're going to unhighlight that, but we do want to know about the gender. So we're going to click on gender. We're going to go to the middle of these two boxes that we have, and we're going to click on that arrow to transfer over gender into the variables window or box. We're going to do the same thing with the number of courses. Click over to get it to the variables chart. So now you have gender and number of courses in your variable box. Note that SPSS defaults display frequency tables. We're going to leave that checked. The other thing that you can notice is that you can run statistics, you can create charts, you can format or bootstrap. We're going to click on charts. Here, a new dialog box appears. We're going to click on bar charts. Here, it tells you what kind of chart do you want to print. There's bar charts, pie charts, and histograms. I'm just going to go ahead and click on bar charts. And then you can either choose frequencies as values or the percentages as values. I'm going to leave that as frequencies for this purpose. And then I'm going to click continue. Now that I've got everything on my frequencies window, I can click OK to run the data. As you can see, once again, I have an output viewer window. This is from the data that I ran from my data editor. So you can run your data from your data editor and then you get an output. Or you can run your data from your syntax editor and you're also going to get an output. The output window does not change. It's always going to look the same. The last thing that I want to do with this data is I want to interpret the frequency procedures in the output viewer window. The first information on the output is the statistics table. This shows you the valid case number. There is 10. That means we had 10 participants. Gender is not shown or the number of courses is not shown. If we had any data missing from either of our participants, we would have different numbers down here. But in this case, all we need to know is that the N represents the number of valid cases. The next table that we see is the frequency table. The first one has gender, and as you can see here, we can see there are 5 valid cases that are male, 5 valid cases that are female, giving us a total of 10. That's our 10 participants. 50% of our participants are male and 50% of our participants are female, giving us a total of 100%. The next frequency table is the number of courses, and it does the same thing as the gender table. On this case, we have a range from 1 to 4 of the number of courses taken. Here you can see that 2 people took 1 course, 3 people took 2 courses, 4 people took 3 courses, and 1 person took 4 courses, giving us a total of 10. It breaks it down into percentages as well. The bar chart that we're going to see next is of the gender. We know that we have 50% males and we have 50% females. The last chart we're going to look at is the number of courses. We can conclude that most students have taken either 2 psychology courses, which is 30%, or 3 psychology courses, which is 40%. The bar chart provides a visual depiction of the distribution. A glance at this graph clearly shows that the most frequent number of courses taken by students prior to taking the business class was 3, followed by 2 courses. The last thing that I'm going to go over is the SPSS startup tutorial. And the reason that I'm doing this is if you have any questions or if you need additional information, the tutorial is a good place to start to answer any of the questions or to give you a guide as to how to go about doing different things on SPSS. Once again, I bring you back to the startup menu. This is where you're going to be able to access the tutorial. On the right hand side of the screen, you'll see Run the Tutorial. Click on that. You want to click on it and then click OK. SPSS tutorial window will open displaying the table of contents. To view a tutorial, click on an item. For example, Introduction. And below Introduction, you can see that there's a sub-menu with sample files, opening a data file, running an analysis, viewing results, and creating charts. You can click on any one of these and you will get a tutorial on how to go about creating charts. All you do is click and move along very easy and very simple to do. This concludes the end of my training on how to use SPSS. Thank you.